traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and pay my respects to Aboriginal elders past and present, for they preserve the rich history of First Nations people. The Aboriginal people are known to be the longest living culture in the world. They are also the longest living educational system in the world. For 60,000 years, they have been educating people about culture, about identity, about land theft in the same way we Palestinians have experienced. I personally take much inspiration from their fight for land rights, justice, right in front of you as a Palestinian Australian. My parents are Nakba survivors. Before I became an Australian citizen, I was officially stateless. How does a country cease to exist? How? Australian veterans served in Palestine, and all of a sudden, that has ceased to exist. 30 years ago, I made the most important decision of my life. I decided to become a teacher. I took the challenge to change lives for the better because I could see that it's only through teachers that we can achieve a just society. I'll bet every single one of you out there today can remember a teacher that made a difference to their lives. Show me your hands. I knew it would. Before I start, I actually want to play a game that I play with my students in my class. It's called True or False. I'm going to make a couple of statements. You tell me if they're true or false. Babies were beheaded by Hamas. No! Hostages were raped. No! Hamas command centers were in hospitals such as Al-Shifa Hospital. False! A genocide is occurring. True. Gaza is being ethnically cleansed. True. War crimes are being committed as we stand here. True. Israel is an apartheid state. True. Palestinians are being targeted. Civilians are being targeted. True. More than 9,000 children have been slaughtered. True. Absolutely. Nelson Mandela famously said, education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. I've seen this firsthand, for if it wasn't for my education, I could not be standing here in front of you, educating you about the crimes that are happening in Palestine. You may think that education only occurs in schools. The answer is no. Children also learn from their daily interactions in society. Children learn from conversations that they hear. They learn from social media. They learn from the arts. They learn from the family. So today, I would like to take this opportunity to encourage every single parent here today, every aunt, every uncle, every grandparent, every adult to please educate our children about Palestine. It certainly isn't in the school curriculum. Ben-Gurion, Israel's first Prime Minister, famously said, does anybody know? The old will die and the young will forget. Shame. This was 75 years ago. My parents who are among us today were young when this happened. They certainly have not forgotten, and they have taught us to make sure that we will never forget. We will not allow our young to forget. We will never stop teaching our children and the children of the diaspora about our Palestinian identity, our culture, our history, our great contributions to society, and our unbreakable resistance from our oppressors. So, to Ben-Gurion, 75 years on, we're going to say, we won't let the young forget. 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 Since the 7th of October, nearly 10,000 children have been slaughtered. Let that sink in. 10,000 children have been slaughtered since the 7th of October. That is approximately 20 primary schools here in Sydney. It is approximately 10 high schools here in Sydney. It is approximately to 200 childcare centres here in Sydney. And we cannot be quiet about that. But you know what? That's not all. 25,000 children have been orphaned. Never again to be able to say mama or baba. But that's not all. Every child under the age of 16 has now lived through 4 wars. 4 bloody wars. They've witnessed the horrors that no human should ever witness, let alone a child. The trauma alone that this brings is absolutely unfathomable. We've been talking about the impact of education. Schools in Gaza have been closed for the past 4 months, just 1 month after the school year officially started. Not just because it's unsafe, not just because too many children have been killed, not just because too many of their teachers have been killed, but closely because their schools have been bombed. Because the leftover classrooms have to be used as shelters for people to hide from the colonizers and the terrorists. What Israel is doing breaks almost every single UN Convention of the Rights of the Child. Israel is waging a war on 1 million children! What makes Israel so special that our leaders from all over the world, including here in Australia, are allowing this to occur? Their inaction is absolute silence. They're actively propping this genocide through military and financial aid. Why is this allowed to occur in Gaza? Had it happened in any other country, there would be absolute uproar. So please, use your means to demonstrate your uproar, because enough is enough. 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 Parents, if you take anything away from my speech today, I hope that it is that you will endeavour to teach our children about Palestine. Teach them about their culture, their history, both religious and political. The current genocide and the continued oppression and apartheid must stop. The children are our future, so teach them well so that they can lead the way. Remember, knowledge itself is power. Having and sharing this knowledge is the cornerstone of reputation and influence, so therefore it is power. Hold your children a little bit tighter. To the children of Gaza, do not lose hope. Do not lose hope for a better future, even though things are bleak. You are strong, you are resilient, and you can get through this and change the world too. Free, free Gaza! Free, free Gaza! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! 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 Palestine will be free!
Israel, USA! How many kids have you killed today? Israel, USA! How many kids have you killed today? Thank you so much for those words, Abia. And in a minute, we'll be hearing from a couple of Palestinian children, to make those points even more strongly. And it's important that we do chant about Israel, but also the United States and Australia, because we know the role that they're playing in this genocide in Gaza. Just yesterday, Joe Biden rushed through yet another package of fresh weapons, fresh shells and tanks to the Israeli military to rain down on the people and the children of the Gaza Strip. Bypassing Congress to rush that in, he called it an emergency. It's an emergency that Israel managed to keep the slaughter in Gaza continuing every single day without pause. And we know, and it's important to come back to the role of the Australian government as well. We know that Albanese, the Labor government, are desperately now trying to repair their image, particularly in the Arab and Muslim communities in Australia, They change a little bit of their rhetoric, but actions speak louder than words. And even their words are inadequate. They're yet to actually condemn a single action Israel's carried out in Gaza. And they're yet to do the important things that would mean that their words meant anything, which would be to cut ties with apartheid Israel, stop sending weapons, cut economic ties, cut diplomatic ties, to all the steps that would actually begin to mean something. A vote in the UN is meaningless if that's all it is. A few words pretending that you're maybe for some kind of bullshit ceasefire don't mean anything. And we say to the Labor government, it doesn't matter how many times you send Tony Burke out to cry some crocodile tears, to pretend you give a damn about Gaza. It's not going to mean that we forget the role that this government is playing. And we see through the bullshit. And we know that Tony Burke's role is to save the Labor government, not to save Gaza. We don't buy it. If he was serious, he'd vote against his own government. He'd cross the floor, along with other Labor MPs who want to stand with Gaza. That's what they'd be willing to do. Because the lives of people in Gaza matter a whole lot more than their cushy parliamentary careers. And when we talk about the actions of the Labor government, of course, we're talking about what they're doing in relation to Palestine. But look what they're doing more generally. If they want us to believe that they're against war, why are they spending $500 billion on nuclear submarines? To sign up so that they're ready with the United States to one day go to war with China. You know, is this the government? Is this the actions of people who give a damn about peace? No, this is the actions of an imperialist government, as they always have been, in alliance with the United States, who want to rule the world and who are happy to see any of their allies commit any number of genocides if it means they get to cling to their power in the world. So in the US, we have a government that would rather fund a genocide than fund a decent healthcare system. And in Australia, we've got a government that would rather support a genocide and fund $500 billion on nuclear submarines than they would address the housing crisis, the environmental crisis that's plaguing us. You know, wage rights for teachers, for nurses. This is what our government should be spending money on. And that's why we say the Palestinian cause is a moral cause, a just cause, and it's a cause for all of us in the world to fight for, because who pays the cost of these imperialist policies? Of course, first it's the Palestinians, it's the Afghans, it's the Iraqis, it's the Vietnamese, but also it's the working class within the imperialist countries themselves. So our fight is with Israel, and it's also with the system in Australia and the United States. Okay, our next speakers, as I said, are going to be two Palestinian kids who are going to tell their story. We have, first up, we have Fatima Rayan. Just let me find my notes. Fatima's father was born in Jabalia refugee camp, of course, which we know is being bombed daily by the Israeli military in Gaza. Her grandparents were expelled from Barbara, a coastal town, in 1948. She's here to tell us her story. She's 11 years old. And as well, straight after that, we're going to hear from Serene Mohammed. She's 13 years old. She's just starting year 7. Again, her family is from Palestine. So please make them very welcome, Fatima and Serene.
I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of our land, the people of the Gadigal Nation. I pay my respects to the elders past, present and future, and always was and always will be Aboriginal land. And these words are empty without saying treaty now, land back. Hello and welcome all. My name is Fatima Rayan, and I am here today to talk about the struggles from my family from this genocide. My father was born in 1973 in Jabalia refugee camp, where he lived most of his life. My father and my Ahmed Fayyaz uncle that had built that house with their own 2 hands, that had housed almost 40 of my family members and is 40 years old. And during these 40 years, it has been stormed with Israeli soldiers multiple times, and they were only allowed to leave a few times a week for 1 hour as they were under curfew. My dad was 15 and my Ahmed Fayyaz was 12 when they started building the house. It was 4 stories high, and apart from my father, his parents and his siblings, his grandparents and 2 of his uncles lived in that house with their wives and children, and has housed 4 generations of my family in the house. Now I'd like to talk about my other jiddo, my mother's father. It was 1948 in May, a small coastal farming town called Badbara. My jiddo was 2 years old. His dad told his wife to take the children with her and go with the villagers to safety, while he went off with the men to fight the invading army. He said he'll be back for his pregnant wife and 2 children in a couple of days to go home. When they went back to her, they were defeated and had to also make Jabalia their home. They always wished to go back to Badbara, but they ended up dying in the refugee camp. This is not supposed to be a sad story. It's supposed to be a story of hope and the resilience of the people of Gaza, who have stood strong for the last 75 years in a brutal occupation designed to dehumanize. It has taught us and shown us compassion, strength, and resilience. It has shown us the people of Gaza are people with empathy, even if the world does not show them empathy. Gaza is a place where all humanity can learn compassion, freedom, and love for thy neighbor. Gaza is where resilience lies, and let us all say resistance is justified when Palestine is occupied. Resistance is justified when Palestine is occupied. Resistance is justified when Palestine is occupied. From the river to the sea, inshallah, let Palestine be free.
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay my respect to the elders, both past, present, and future. Hi, my name is Serene Mohammed. My grandfather is originally from Gaza. During the 1948 Nakba, more than 700,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homes. Palestinians have been denied their right to exist and their right of self-determination for more than 7 decades. Can you imagine living as a refugee on your own homeland? This is the case of Palestinians living nowadays in Palestine. Israel has been committing silent genocides, war crimes, and displacements of Palestinians since 1948 to present. Shame! Shame! It never began on 7th of October, certainly far longer before. I am here to tell Australian politicians and Education Minister Jason Clare, you say school is to prepare us for the real world and to stand up against bullying, injustice, and inequity. So don't blame us if we speak up and condemn the genocide and war crimes happening in Gaza. Malcolm X once said, "The media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power because you can control the minds of the masses." I am here to blame the biased media outlets in Australia and the West for being guilty of hiding and twisting the truth to fit in the Zionist agenda. Thanks to social media, we know the truth straight from the ground, and we are not waiting anymore for your manipulated news to deceive us. Shame on you. We need an immediate permanent ceasefire, Israel's illegal occupation to end, and all Palestinian hostages of more than 10,000 to be returned safely to their families. Thanks everyone for being here today, for proving your humanity and showing solidarity and justice towards the freedom of Palestine. Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Thank you.
Palestinians are a sentimental people. We're sentimental because the stories of our parents, of our grandparents, of our great-grandparents are often the only connection we have to our homeland. We are sentimental because we long for the days when Palestine was free. We also attribute a lot of value to symbolism. If you ever walk into a Palestinian's home, you'll see symbols of olive trees, which have deep historical and cultural roots in Palestine. The olive trees can handle droughts, they can handle sub-zero temperatures, they can handle frost and even fire. They are symbolic of Palestinian resilience against the Israeli occupation and their connection to the land. You'll also see the kufiyya, which is colored with the olive tree and the fishnet and bold patterns, each representing a piece of Palestinian society. The kufiyya became popularized as a symbol of resistance against British colonial rule. You'll also see the tatriz, a national treasure of hand embroidery passed down from generation to generation, with each embroidered piece portraying a story from Palestine's timeline. You'll see the watermelon, in which following the '67 war, when Israel seized control of the West Bank of the Gaza Strip and annexed East Jerusalem, the government banned the Palestinian flag in the occupied territory. In response, Palestinians began using the watermelon with the same colors of the flag as a symbol of resistance. But one particular symbol I would like to point your attention to is Handala. So for those of you who don't know, Najil Ali was a Palestinian cartoonist, and he was known as one of the best cartoonists in the region. Handala, he drew Handala, which is a figure of a 10-year-old boy with his back turned to the viewer and his hands clasped behind his back, symbolizing the character's rejection of foreign intervention. The artist explained that the 10-year-old represented the age of Naji when he was forced to leave his village, Al-Shajara, and he would not grow up, Handala would not grow up until he could return to his homeland. He also vowed that he would reveal Handala's face only when Palestinian refugees returned to their homeland. Najil Ali, like many artists, like many journalists, like many political figures, was assassinated in 1988 because there's nothing that Israel fears more than strong Palestinian voices that speak the truth. And finally, one of my favorite symbols of Palestine is this. To some people, this is simply a spoon, but to Palestinians, it is a fierce symbol of resistance and the unrelenting resilience of Palestinians. In September of 2021, 6 Palestinian political prisoners escaped the high-security Gilboa prison using spoons. They dug a tunnel from inside of the prison, which eventually led to their escape. As the world watched in awe of their brilliant ways, the spoon soon became a symbol of Palestinian strength, resilience, and intelligence. For the colonizer states, they can try to bomb us, they can try to massacre us, but we will only give birth to more resistance fighters. The terrorist state of Israel, they can try to ban our flags, but the colors of our patriotism will paint the seeds of resistance watermelons. And the fascist state of Israel, they can try to lock us up, but no prison walls can stand in the way of a Palestinian and their freedom. Our resilience cannot be measured. You will often hear a Palestinian say, لا بديل عن فلسطين إلا الجنة, which translates to, there is no substitute to Palestine except heaven. Our commitment to our cause transcends the material world, and we are willing to die for our land, our people, and for righteousness. Before I introduce our next speaker, I want to remind everyone the importance of projecting Palestinian voices and stories, now more than ever. Everyone remembers, Ya Ruh al-Ruh, the soul of my soul, the heartfelt goodbye of a grieving grandfather to his martyred 4-year-old granddaughter in Gaza. Yusuf, شعره curly حلاوة. Yusuf, the beautiful curly-haired boy. معلش, معلش, anything for Palestine. The stoic words spoken from Gaza's hero, Wa'il al-Dahdouh, who lost multiple members of his family, including his wife and his grandchild. But in the midst of reporting, yet he continued his work because his commitment to the people of Gaza. And last but not least, the fallen Dr. Rifat Al-Arair, a professor of English at the Islamic University of Gaza and a poet. He was massacred on the 6th of December in an Israeli airstrike. He was known for his striking intellect and his moving words. Before he passed, he released a poem that still reverberates throughout the world. If I must die, you must live to tell my story. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a story. Please keep their stories alive. Their deaths will not be in vain, but rather be legends that will echo in sirens on the day that Palestine is free. لن ننسى, لن ننسى, لن نغفر, لن نستسلم. We will not forget, we will not forgive, and we will never surrender. Our next speaker is a Palestinian powerhouse from Gaza, once named a Palestinian cultural gem, whose spoken words resound in Palestinian resistance. Please welcome my dear friend, Mustafa Az-Zakzouk.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I extend the respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. I would like also to acknowledge the land of Palestine, from the West Bank of Al-Makhtas, where Jesus was baptized on the Jordan River, to my grandfather, Orange Farm, by Yaritna in Jaffa, along the Mediterranean Sea. From the glittering coast of Haifa, all the way down south to our beautiful bleeding wound, Gaza. I recognize and affirm the right of the Palestinian refugees, myself included, to return back to the land of our ancestors, who with hope passed on their keys to us. May our journey back to our land be marked by justice and peace. I stand before you today with a heavy heart, remembering the question from the little girl in Gaza as medics treat her wounds after an Israeli airstrike demolished her house along with the people inside it. She asked, "Ammo, هذا حلم ولا بجد?" Which means, "Uncle, is this a dream or reality?" Hoping against hope, she wishes that it was just a dream, holding into the possibility of returning to her home. To her, I extend my deepest empathy. Unfortunately, it's not a dream, my angel. The reality you face is far more cruel than any nightmare our minds could even imagine. This week, when I spoke to my family in Gaza, I asked them what messages they wanted to convey to the world. It feels like this week, it feels like we are